He thought no one would notice. Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, snuck behind palace walls with one mission: destroy Prince Edward's biggest night. The Winter Gala was meant to raise millions for starving children. Instead, it became a battlefield, and Tom brought the match. But what he didn't know was that Edward already knew. And when the truth finally exploded in front of hundreds of royals, diplomats, and global press, it wasn't Tom's plan that came to life. It was Edward's revenge. This is the night that erased Camilla's son forever. The gala that was never just a gala. In November 2025, Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Edward would host the prestigious Winter Charity Gala, a glittering affair held every 2 years at Windsor Castle. This year's event was expected to raise more than £20 million to support emergency food relief in war-torn regions like South Sudan, Gaza, and Yemen. For Prince Edward, this was more than a fundraiser. It was a personal mission to prove himself as a modern royal, relevant, effective, and globally engaged amid the younger generation's rising popularity. Behind the scenes, Queen Camilla played a familiar but controversial role. In a move that surprised many within the palace, she recommended her son, Tom Parker Bowles, as the gala's culinary advisor. On paper, it made sense. Tom was a respected British food critic and had published 5 cookbooks over the past 2 decades. Yet his insertion into a royal production of this scale immediately raised eyebrows. It wasn't just a culinary gig. It was a front-row seat to the monarchy's most important soft power event of the year. Palace staff noticed something was off by October 15th. Tom wasn't simply advising, he was taking over. He dismissed long-standing catering staff, hired unfamiliar external vendors, and refused to submit his revised menus to Edward's office for approval. By October 28th, he had effectively cut off direct communication between the palace and the kitchen team. He was acting like a man on a mission, said one anonymous staffer, and it wasn't a good one. Those closest to Edward began worrying that the event was being commandeered. On November 2nd, Tom made his boldest move. He ordered a full overhaul of the gala's traditional British-French fusion menu in favor of what he called a disruptive dining experience. Dishes included fermented eel sorbet, lamb tartare with lavender foam, and a deconstructed black pudding smoothie. Even experienced royal chefs were baffled. But with Camilla's implicit backing, Tom faced no resistance. What seemed like culinary flair was something darker, an opening salvo in what would become one of the most shocking nights in modern royal history. Camilla's son and his hidden rage. Tom Parker. Bowles had always been a name the public knew, but rarely noticed. Despite publishing 5 best-selling cookbooks and serving as a judge on BBC's Food and Drink for over a decade, he remained an outsider to the royal inner circle. Unlike his mother, Queen Camilla, Tom didn't carry royal blood. And in certain rooms of the palace, that still mattered. Flashbacks from the late 1990s still haunted him, particularly a moment reportedly shared in private with King Charles before his mother's marriage. "You don't have the right blood," Charles allegedly said, dismissing Tom from a family meeting regarding royal responsibilities. That one sentence followed Tom through years of public civility and private resentment. To the world, he was a charming food critic, but behind closed doors, bitterness festered. In the final planning meeting on November 7th, held inside the gilded blue drawing room, staff noted how Tom sat silently across from Prince Edward, barely making eye contact. According to one aide, he looked like he was measuring him, for war, not for wine pairings. The mood in the room shifted. Even the palace florist later said, "The flowers wilted faster that day." That same night, after the meeting ended, Tom reportedly made a chilling call from the palace courtyard. The conversation was brief but clear. "Make sure the menu changes are locked. No reprints. And prepare the presentation room." That moment marked the real beginning of what some insiders would later call the Windsor coup, a plan not to uplift the gala, but to sabotage it from the inside. No one suspected him. That was Tom's greatest weapon. He wore his royal connections like camouflage, not armor. The staff assumed he was eccentric, not dangerous. But by mid-November, subtle changes were sweeping through Windsor's kitchen, and none of them pointed to a five-star meal. Because while the world prepared to watch Prince Edward shine, Tom was orchestrating the biggest royal embarrassment of the decade. And it started with salt, fire, and a menu that no one had seen coming. The secret sabotage begins. By November 10th, Windsor Castle's kitchen was no longer under royal control. It was under Tom's. He quietly replaced 12 kitchen staff members with specialty hires whose backgrounds couldn't be verified. The head chef, confused but overruled, was ordered to stand down. Officially, Tom insisted it was to refresh the energy. In reality, it was phase 2 of his sabotage plan. The menu began shifting drastically. Out went the traditional roast venison with truffle juice, replaced with what Tom labeled a symbolic statement dish. Raw sea urchin served in gold leaf. Another dish? Pigeon tartare with beetroot foam, intended, reportedly, to unsettle rather than delight. Food insiders later described the lineup as aggressively avant-garde. The palace had no idea. Backstage, the problems escalated. Ovens overheated, prep times doubled, and deliveries were mysteriously delayed. One key ingredient shipment, valued at £15,000, arrived half-rotten. Staff were instructed not to speak to the media, and tensions soared. Some workers asked to be reassigned, but the kitchen was locked into Tom's grip. As the pressure rose, he stayed calm, watching from the sidelines like a conductor guiding quiet chaos. Tom even altered the dining schedule, moving the main course to 8:30 p.m., the same time Prince Edward was slated to begin his keynote speech. The distraction was intentional, but the crown jewel of his plan wasn't the food. It was what would play behind the prince during that exact moment. A video, one meant to humiliate. The young worker who discovered everything. In the whirlwind of last-minute gala preparations, one name no one expected to matter suddenly became the center of everything. Elias da Costa, a 21-year-old prep cook from Reading, hired only 2 weeks prior through a temporary agency. Quiet, observant, and unassuming, Elias had no royal connections, just a work ethic and sharp eyes. And that made him the perfect witness. By November 12th, Elias had noticed troubling inconsistencies. Prep lists didn't match inventory. The night shift had unfamiliar faces. On 3 occasions, orders were changed at the last minute, without a signature or kitchen lead confirmation. Then came the menu. When Elias saw it, he was confused. The printed version was different from the approved list shown in staff orientation. But the moment that changed everything came at 9:42 p.m. on November 13th. Elias passed by a private conference room and heard Tom Parker Bowles' voice, firm, low, and menacing. "Make sure the video plays behind Edward's speech. No mistakes. This has to land." He froze and listened. The next morning, Elias checked the audio-visual team's equipment logs. Something didn't add up. He borrowed a cleaning badge and entered the AV room. There, he saw a file labeled Final Tribute, V4. Curious, he copied it to a flash drive and took it home. What he saw horrified him. It wasn't a tribute. It was a smear. Elias had stumbled into the middle of a silent war, a royal betrayal crafted not with swords or scandal, but with kitchens, cameras, and sabotage. And now, he held the proof. One wrong step could cost him everything, but one right step could save a prince, a gala, and the crown's honor. The only question left was, would anyone believe him? Elias risks it all. On the morning of November 14th, Elias made a decision that would change his life forever. He wrote a brief message, urgent, sabotage underway, involves menu, AV, and personnel, confidential evidence enclosed. He dropped the flash drive and note in a sealed envelope, addressed to Prince Edward's private secretary, and left it at the East Wing service desk. Then he waited, terrified. By 6 p.m., he was called in, not to the kitchen, but to the West Wing. Prince Edward, calm and composed, sat across from Elias in a private sitting room. For nearly 45 minutes, Elias explained everything. The menu swaps, the suspicious hires, the overheard threat, and the video. Edward didn't interrupt. He didn't raise his voice. When it was over, he stood, thanked Elias, and handed him a signed letter of protection. Elias was now under royal guard. Edward's face didn't show anger, just quiet resolve. He knew Tom resented the crown, but he hadn't known it had gone this far. This wasn't just rebellion. It was treasonous sabotage under the guise of a gala. Yet, Edward made one key choice. The event would not be cancelled. Instead, he began crafting a counterplan, one that would not only preserve the gala, but expose the truth at the perfect moment. The trap had been spotted, but Edward wasn't going to spring it early. He knew that revenge, to be royal, had to be quiet and devastating. And now he had the tool, proof. While Tom moved forward, blind to his exposure, Prince Edward began preparing a twist, one that would turn the tables in front of the entire world. Prince Edward sets the trap. On November 15th, Edward quietly summoned his private cybersecurity team, led by Captain Hugo Litton, a former MI6 analyst. Their mission: retrieve, verify, and surgically replace the planted video in the AV system, without alerting Tom. For 36 hours, they worked in shifts, documenting everything and preparing a new video. The plan was bold. Edward would allow the AV system to run on schedule. At exactly 8:30 p.m. on gala night, the tribute video would play. But instead of smearing Edward, it would show footage of Tom himself, caught rewriting menus, whispering instructions, and handing cash to kitchen hires. Every move recorded on hidden cameras installed by Elias days earlier. But Edward didn't stop there. He altered the night's schedule ever so slightly. The timing of courses, seating arrangements, and even the podium height were subtly adjusted. The room was set not for dinner, but for judgment. And no one suspected a thing. When final rehearsals wrapped on November 16th, Tom appeared satisfied. He believed everything was in place. He had no idea the knives had turned. And now, it wasn't Edward who was cornered. It was him. The night of reckoning arrives. The evening of November 17th, 2025, Windsor Castle sparkled under thousands of crystal lights. The Winter Charity Gala was finally underway. Over 600 elite guests had arrived, from UN ambassadors to A-list celebrities. Every table was dressed in royal gold, and behind it all, Prince Edward stood calm, collected, and ready. Tom Parker Bowles arrived just before 7:15 p.m., dressed in custom-tailored navy, blending in with ease. He took his place near the catering command post, occasionally glancing at the control booth. His face showed no tension. He believed he had won. The first signs of chaos unfolded at 7:45 p.m. when the starter plates were served. A bizarre cold soup flavored with squid ink and lavender sparked confusion at table 4, where 2 foreign dignitaries quietly pushed it aside. By 8 p.m., the main dish, an oddly bitter rabbit mousse over sea kelp, arrived. The discomfort was real. Whispers spread. Silverware paused. Tom watched from the shadows, a small grin flickering on his face. Then, right on cue at 8:30 p.m., the announcer called for the gala's centerpiece moment, the tribute video to Prince Edward. The lights dimmed. Cameras turned. Tom's moment had arrived, or so he thought. But in that silence, the night turned. Because the video that followed was not the mockery Tom had designed. No, it was Edward's move now. And with the press, the guests, and the world watching, the trap was about to spring, not with a scandal, but with truth. Cold, recorded, and undeniable. The video that destroyed Tom Parker Bowles. The screen flickered, and then came the first frame. Tom Parker Bowles, clearly visible, entering the catering hall at 2:12 a.m., clipboard in hand. The room froze. His voice filled the hall. "Change the dishes. I want them confused." Gasps rippled through the room. Next frame, Tom handing an envelope of cash to an unidentified man at the service entrance, dated November 11th. "This stays quiet," he whispered. Another angle showed him arguing with the head chef, then replacing the AV team's flash drive with one from his coat pocket. The audio cut to Tom's most damning line recorded the night Elias had overheard him. "When Edward's on stage, play the damn video. Let him choke on it." The audience audibly reacted. Shock, betrayal, disgust. A woman at table 12 covered her mouth. Even Camilla, seated beside a stunned King Charles, looked away. As the lights came up, all eyes turned, not to Edward, but to Tom. He was pale, motionless, his hands clenched. It was over. The story had told itself, with no narration needed. There was no chaos, no yelling, just silence, followed by a wave of shame that swept across the room. Tom had tried to humiliate a prince. Instead, he'd humiliated himself. And now, the gala wasn't about him. It was about Edward and what he would do next. Edward's silent revenge. With the room still frozen, Prince Edward rose from his chair and walked to the podium. He didn't mention the sabotage, not once. Instead, he spoke directly about the children in Yemen, Ukraine, and Somalia, whose lives would be changed by the evening's donations. His speech lasted 9 minutes. No anger, no scandal, just grace. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Foreign dignitaries stood. A row of American donors pledged an additional £5 million on the spot. The gala's success had been salvaged, not through confrontation, but through composure. Tom? He tried to leave quietly, but the press was already outside. Flash bulbs exploded. Headlines were written before he reached his car. The man who tried to bring down a prince had instead triggered his own fall. Edward, meanwhile, stayed behind long after the event, personally thanking kitchen staff, shaking hands, and offering Elias a quiet word of gratitude. No press saw it. No photos captured it. But in that moment, the true heart of royalty was clear. One man tried to turn a royal event into a scandal. The other turned betrayal into strength. But it wasn't just about the gala. It was about legacy. And in the days that followed, the monarchy would respond, not with drama, but with finality. Tom Parker Bowles. By November 19th, the palace issued a short but devastating statement. Mr. Tom Parker Bowles is no longer welcome at royal events, public or private. The words were cold, calculated, and irreversible. Overnight, his name vanished from royal press releases. Invitations were withdrawn. His reputation crumbled like a fallen soufflé. Major publications pulled reviews he'd written over the past 15 years. Endorsements evaporated. Within 72 hours, his cookbook deal was suspended, and 2 of his restaurant collaborations backed out. He wasn't just disgraced, he was erased. And Elias? He received a full-time appointment to Prince Edward's office as junior protocol officer, along with a private commendation signed by both Edward and the king. He disappeared from headlines, but rose quietly in service. Edward made no further public comments, but 1 week later, he visited a food center in Bristol, helping serve meals funded by the gala's donations. No crown, no speech, just a prince in rolled-up sleeves. His revenge? Not scandal, not punishment, but action. The gala raised over £27 million, more than any in its history. Children were fed, dignity restored, and a traitor silenced. Not with force, but with truth. When the lights came up, the silence inside Windsor Castle's grand ballroom was deafening. For a few unbearable seconds, no one moved, no one spoke. Everyone just stared at Tom Parker Bowles, frozen, pale, and suddenly exposed as the architect of royal sabotage. In less than 4 minutes, Prince Edward had done what no press leak, no scandal, and no tabloid headline ever could. He had shown the truth, and not with rage, not with words, but with cold, calculated clarity. The video played on screen didn't just embarrass Tom, it erased him. It captured every whisper, every envelope, every shadowy plan. Camilla's only son, once a quiet background figure with a respected name in food and wine circles, was now the face of royal disgrace. And the worst part? No one had to say anything. The footage spoke louder than any royal decree. The guests knew. The donors knew. The world now knew. As the crowd stood in stunned silence, Prince Edward walked to the podium, not to gloat, not to scold, but to speak about the very reason they were all gathered. Children. Children in Somalia, Ukraine, Gaza, and South Sudan who needed food, dignity, and hope. And despite everything, he delivered the speech flawlessly. His voice didn't shake. His gaze didn't drop. He didn't mention Tom. Not once. He didn't need to. And when he stepped away, the applause was thunderous, not polite, not ceremonial, real, emotional, earned. What followed in the hours and days after would mark one of the most brutal quiet cancellations in royal memory. By sunrise, a palace statement was released. Effective immediately, Mr. Tom Parker Bowles will no longer be included in royal events, ceremonies, or invitations, formal or informal. His actions stand in opposition to the values of the crown. The message was clear. He was out, not by scandal, but by sovereign will. Within 24 hours, Tom lost 3 endorsement deals. 2 of his 5 published cookbooks were pulled from royal gift shops. BBC Food, where he'd been a frequent guest critic, announced they would pause all future collaborations with him pending review. By 72 hours, it was over. His agent dropped him. One of his restaurant consulting roles in London's Soho ended quietly. His podcast, just launched in October 2025, was removed from 3 major platforms due to brand conflicts. Even press interviews, once eager for a quote from Camilla's son, went silent. There were no phone calls, no headlines begging for his side. Because there was no other side. And what of Queen Camilla? Insiders say she was visibly shaken, but gave no public comment. Her silence only fueled speculation. Did she know? Did she approve? Or was she blindsided by her own son? Either way, she didn't save him. Not this time. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Elias DaCosta, the 21-year-old prep cook who risked everything to sound the alarm, was quietly promoted to a junior protocol officer within Edward's personal staff. No public reward, no red carpet, just a signed letter of gratitude and a private audience with Edward himself. The kind of royal recognition that doesn't show up in tabloids, but lasts a lifetime. As for Edward, he didn't speak about it again. 1 week later, he was spotted at a children's meal center in Bristol, helping serve the very food funded by the now legendary gala. No speech, no photographers, just sleeves rolled up and hands busy. It was the image the public never saw, but the one that defined everything. His revenge wasn't rage, it was results. His justice wasn't punishment, it was purpose. And in the end, he didn't just protect his legacy. He restored it. Tom Parker Bowles thought he could break the crown from within, but Prince Edward reminded him, and the world, of one simple truth. Real royalty doesn't shout. It just wins.